It's such an asinine way of thinking that it's okay to put people on a drug with side effects like Ozempic, but it's not okay. It's dangerous to tell them to eat meat. Really? I mean, really. I am turning 60 in a few days. I turned my birthday is my 60th birthday. Ooh, that's a little hard to say, people. My 60th birthday is in a few days. And
Happy birthday.
thank you. So, but here I am. And sometimes I look back and I think, what would my life be like now if I did not start that Atkins 30 years ago, which began a whole new trajectory for me?
Drace, how did you find carnivore?
Well, hi, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on your channel. I really enjoy all of the interviews that you do. So, my journey is not an exciting one, but it's a lengthy one. So, this all started, I'll try to make this short. It started 30 years ago, and I began low carb doing Atkins. So, I grew up not eating processed food, that sort of thing. We had a garden. Soda was not allowed in the house except for things like birthdays. And I used to think that was weird as a kid. Now as an adult, I'm so grateful that my mother did not, allow that rat poison at the dinner table. So then I went away to college, and I never struggled with my weight, but in college I started to a little bit. And then after, because your eating habits, I mean, they're so bad, and you're left to your own devices. I now don't have my mother to babysit for me and put food on my plate. So I could be found at 1 o'clock in the morning emptying the vending machine looking for a Snickers bar because I'm studying for an exam. So that was a bad habit that started. Then I worked at a television station, and because my degree is in radio, television, film, I worked at a television station, and crazy hours, and again, even worse eating habits that I got into. And I started hanging around people who ate differently from me, how I grew up. So eating more processed stuff, things like that. Then my husband and I purchased a 200-year-old stone farmhouse that we renovated. And so now my habits got even worse because now it's 11 o'clock at night. We put the tools away. And something that I never did before is we would hit fast food joints at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm having a burger and fries. And I didn't realize how much weight I had put on. I knew I gained weight. I guess I didn't have a scale. Like, what female doesn't have a scale? But apparently I did not. And maybe that was a good thing. But anyway, one day I was looking at pictures that we had taken as we were working on the house. And I was like, son of a bitch, my ass is the size of Montana. Like, I was shocked when I saw this photo. I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do something about this. So, but of course I didn't know what. And of course I started to follow, well, do the low fat, which I never got on that train, but I did cut back a bit trying to figure out how to lose weight. I ate a lot of cereal with skim milk and, that sort of thing. And it made no difference. It made no difference. So now, I'm annoyed as hell. I'm really frustrated, kind of depressed over it. And my husband went on a fishing trip and in Canada and with his uncle. And this was before we had cell phones, people. And he calls me and says, hey, Uncle Ron lost all of this weight doing this crazy diet called Atkins. And he's eating hamburgers and bacon and he's losing weight. Like, so, okay, I'm happy and annoyed as hell all at the same time because he's eating burgers and bacon. And I'm eating cereal and my butt's getting bigger and he's getting smaller. Like, I don't follow the logic here. So long story short, I'm like, what's the book? So I immediately get the book and I read it and I start doing the Atkins, and the weight of course poured off. But what I never in a million years expected were these incredible secondary benefits. I was just gobsmacked by it. I couldn't believe it. I really could not believe it. So within 2 weeks time, I was back to my pleasant, peachy self. I was not moody as hell anymore. I didn't have the short fuse that I started to have. And I also was starting to become tired. It would be 11 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. And I would start, I could hardly keep my eyes open. And I couldn't understand why. And my skin always looked fatigued. Now, by the time I was in my mid 20s, my skin, it's the best way I can explain it. It looked fatigued. I would get plenty of sleep and my skin just looked tired. And 2 weeks into this, I was no longer tired. Didn't feel the need to doze off if I was sitting there doing nothing at 3 in the afternoon. My skin completely changed. I was shocked. And my disposition, I was just less moody. And that was it. It was game on. I didn't know what was going on, but I did know that somehow what I was eating and what I was no longer eating was affecting me in a really big way. So there was really no internet. I mean, it was in its infancy at this time. So it was reading books and things like that. And so, but my journey began. And I am I'm maybe sometimes to a fault, but I am an all or nothing person. I'm a put up or shut up. I don't care which one you pick, but you better pick one. And so once that happened to me and I had these benefits, that was it. I had already decided I was never going back. I was never going back. And so over the years, I kept learning. Over the years, other things happened with my health. I've always been on a journey with health because I suffer from vertigo. I've suffered from that since I was 19, and sometimes it can be really debilitating for me. And of course, I figured all of that, no thanks to the medical community. I figured all of that out for myself. It took me years, but I figured it out. And then I had Lyme disease, and I ended up with chronic Lyme disease. And so that was another game changer for me with my health. And so I was now on another mission to do whatever I could to create a very inhospitable neighborhood for the Lyme bacteria to, set up camp and live. So carnivore plays right into that because there's nothing bacteria loves more than to feed off of sugar, which I already was not doing. 30 years, for 30 years, I've been doing carnivore for probably about, I'm going to say 3 years. But prior to that, at least 25 years, I did very low carb once I started the Atkins. So there was no pasta, there was no bagels, there were no chips, there were no cookies, there were no cake. And let me tell you, people, all of that crap lives in my house. It still lives in my house. But I don't ever touch it. I will not do it. I will not do it because, you have to hike up your big girl and your big boy pants and say, what is more important? Is the bagel more important, or is my mental and physical well-being more important? Is the bag of chips more important, or is my happiness and again, my health and well-being? Those things do not supersede me. They don't. And that's how I keep myself in check. And I'm so far removed from it now that, again, all of that lives in my house. I mean, I could, right over here, there's a drawer that's filled with, crap. And I think that's another thing that has helped me, because people always say, oh, you're so disciplined. And it irritates the hell out of me because it's not discipline. It's self-respect. And it's taking full responsibility for my health, just like I take full responsibility for my wealth. That's your job as an adult. Grow up and do it. That's your job. And then it's your job to share that knowledge with your kids so they can be responsible and productive adults. So, but so yeah, I mean, all of that stuff lives in my house, and I don't touch it. So it's not a matter of discipline. It's a matter of, I am turning 60 in a few days. I turn my birthday is my 60th birthday. Ooh, that's a little hard to say, people. My 60th birthday is in a few days, and
Happy birthday.
thank you. So, but here I am. And sometimes I look back and I think, what would my life be like now if I did not start that Atkins 30 years ago, which began a whole new trajectory for me with my health. And I think I would be in a really different place mentally and physically. I think I would be in a really different place had I not followed this path. And I'm very grateful for my husband's uncle. And he didn't stay with it, but I did, and I kept reaping the benefits from it. And then there were other reasons, to learn more and do more and try to figure more out. And so that's, at age 60, that's where I'm at.
So, well, firstly, congratulations. But
Thanks.
so the 3 years carnivore,
Yeah.
was it just a progression on, like, was it like a situation where you never got out of induction on Atkins and like carnivore was
Yeah,
only a couple of steps away from that, or did
there
you
was,
watch a
I
video?
honestly, I had no particular reason to seek out carnivore. It kind of sort of fell in my lap because, Dave, I've always been on this journey of health. So I'm always investigating. I'm always searching. And I'm always looking for ways to keep the Lyme disease symptoms from ever rearing their ugly head. So because of that, you come across different people. And I think, quite honestly, I came across Dr. Ken Berry like everybody else. And and it resonated with me, and I just thought, well, hell, what kicks Lyme disease in the shins more than feeding it absolutely nothing? So I thought, well, let's give the carnivore a go. And I love food, and I can eat a ton of food. It's always been the running joke with my friends. And like, I was never a girl that you didn't take me out on a date, and I'm like, oh, I'll just have some water and a salad. Oh no, I'm gonna have a huge steak and a plate yay big and fill her up. And I mean, I can sit and eat food at any guy. I mean, I can put away a lot of food. But one of the things too that I stopped doing when I began the Atkins, I didn't snack anymore. Now, for the 25 years or whatever, I did do 3 meals a day. I did that. But when I started carnivore, I do two. I have my breakfast, and then I have my lunch. And it's not because, oh, I can only have 2 meals. It's like, I'm ready to eat. Come dinner time, I get home from work, I'm really hungry and I'm ready to eat. And then I don't eat again until the next morning, and I feel no need to. And people always say, oh, I can never do that. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep. I mean, my stomach would be growling and blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't happen, folks. It doesn't. If you eat what you should be eating, it doesn't happen. I don't believe we're naturally wired to be that way, where we have to constantly eat, so it's easy. Back to your question, there was no real reason. It's just, I'm always learning, and things came up, it resonated with me, and then that just started a whole new journey for me.
Hmm. So, yeah, it's very interesting for me that you started with Atkins, because that's basically the way I got into this
Oh, okay.
low carb space as well. And about it's 24 years ago now that I first did Atkins, and it was also buying the book. It wasn't finding anything online.
Right. Yeah, it
And
wasn't.
although, we were using the internet, I guess, quite a bit, in my company and whatever, it wasn't common to spend, there was no smartphones. So it wasn't
Right.
common to spend your whole life on the internet. So,
Right.
um, yeah, it was just read the book, give it a try. But giving it a try made me realize my body's responding really well to something. And, over the years, although I went off Atkins from time to time, over the years, no matter what people say about, oh, it's dangerous, it's this, it's that, the other, it's like internally, this works really well for my body. I feel so much better when I'm doing it, So when, something like carnivore comes along, it makes it much easier to jump on and go, well, I'm
Mhm.
doing this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I watched a commercial the other day for Ozempic, and I thought it's it's such an asinine way of thinking that it's okay to put people on a drug with side effects like Ozempic, but it's not okay. It's dangerous to tell them to eat meat. Really? I mean, really? Come on. It's just that it's so unbelievably stupid and moronic. But people, no one questions it. No one questions it. And I have always been a nonconformist. Oh, just ask my mother. I have always been, since I was in kindergarten and locked horns with my kindergarten teacher. Like, what kid does that? Me. So not thinking like everyone else, I've always been comfortable with it because, that's another thing people will say, well, what do you do about functions and people saying stuff to you? And I've never had, maybe I just give off that air, like, don't push me. You'll be sorry. So, because I don't take kindly to being told what to do. And so I think maybe people pick up on that energy from me and don't say anything. But I don't care. If someone is genuinely curious, I would love to have the conversation with them. But but I'm not all that sociable. Like, I don't go out to eat. I haven't. Even being low carb, I didn't do that. So carnivore was just, I'm a hardcore homebody, and so carnivore just plays right into that for me, because I would rather sit and eat my steak at home on my patio than go to a restaurant where I don't know how it's prepared. And so, and like I said, just my nature being very much a nonconformist, carnivore has been easy for me because, I will never apologize or explain myself to anyone when it comes to taking responsibility for my health and my well-being. I don't owe that to anyone. I only owe it to me. And so that makes it easier. And I think I never drank alcohol. So that sort of helped me. And I'll tell you why. Well, I stand corrected. I got drunk twice in high school, sick as a dog, just put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger. I was so sick. I wanted to die. I was so miserable. And being an all or nothing person, I never touched it again. That was it. Those 2 times, 17, 18 years old, I never, ever touched it again. And so, when I was in college, everybody drank, and my roommates loved it because I carted them around all over the place. But there were absolutely people who had a problem with it, that didn't like that I didn't drink. But to me, like, that was a perfect gauge to measure a jackass. You know what I mean? If you had a problem with it and I wasn't saying anything to you, well, then you're an idiot. That was an easy way to peg who the idiots were. And I sort of feel that way with carnivore. Like, if you got to be a jackass about it and say crap to me and, and try to put me on the spot and make me explain myself, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't
So
hang around people that would do that to me. Like, I'm very selective who gets to be in my life. And so the folks who are in my life, just maybe that's why I don't experience it, because they just wouldn't do that. Yeah.
so you mentioned that there are kind of the bad foods are in the house, in the drawers and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's other family member stuff.
Yeah, my husband.
Mm,
He's definitely a junk food
mm.
junkie. I mean, he always has been, and so yeah, I'm just looking around and all of that stuff. It's all here. I mean, there are always chips in the house. There's cake. There's cookies. He eats pasta, and it's always been that way. It's just always been that way. But I really can have sort of a militant when I decide mentality, and there are no ifs, ands, or buts. And so I might walk over and go and smell it. Oh, that smells really good. And then I walk away. That's it. Because I have to abstain, because it's like smoking. I mean, I smoked when I was in college. I only ever quit smoking once. I never tried to quit smoking. I did it once and made the decision. I'm like, I'm going to finish the last cigarettes that I have, and I'm never going to do it again. And that was it. That was like close to 4 years ago now. So that's just that's just my personality. And in some ways it's really been good that I'm like that, because it makes it easier for me, easier than I think it does for a lot of people. And I understand. I don't want to sound like, it's super easy for me and I can, the moment I decide I'm done with something, I'm done. That is how I operate. But I also understand it's not so easy for other people. And it is difficult when you have someone in the house that, has a lot of this garbage. But I also think one of the things that made it easier for me, Dave, is that I changed my vocabulary. And I didn't set out to do it. It naturally just happened. But you will never, and I mean never, hear me call that stuff food. Never. I never set out to do that. It just, when I started the Atkins and I had these life-changing benefits, I just, like, intuitively, I just stopped calling it food. And I will call it every nasty thing under the sun, from rat poison to shit to garbage to, crap, whatever you want to call it. But I never give it the credibility of calling it food. And I do really wish that is a narrative that would change, even in the carnivore and the low carb community. Stop giving this processed stuff credibility, calling it food, because it is not, nor has it ever been. So we need to call it what it is. And that is, to me, it's poison on a plate. It's just that simple. When I look at that stuff, and it makes it very easy for me to say no, to just walk past it. It's poison on a plate. And I'm not going to sit and eat, whether it's this much rat poison or this much rat poison. At the end of the day, it's still rat poison on a plate. And I won't eat it. I won't touch it.
This is a really good point. Like, at what point has some authority decided that it can be called food, when in actual fact, when we ingest it, our body does everything it can to get rid of it?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah. But I was thinking about that when I knew I was doing this interview, and and there are things that pop into your head and you're trying to think, like, what are some important things that I feel like I have experienced that I want to share with other people, that I hope helps them in their journey somehow. And I thought, I changed my vocabulary. And it just naturally happened. And it made the process a lot easier. And so now, like I said, I just don't call it food. And I wish we would all stop calling it food, because it is not. Yeah, it really is not.
Yeah. I kind of got into the habit of doing that for a while. I had to stop though because when you culturally when you do that from English into Japanese,
Uh,
um, like poison is doku in Japanese, but when you say that about food in Japan, it's kind of it feels like you're insulting whoever
it's
it was
not
that
well
actually
received,
made the stuff. Yeah,
frowned upon. Yeah,
so I
yeah.
had to.
I can see that.
Mm.
But for me, it's worked, and I think that's what's helped me also with it all living in my house. Yeah, that's also that's
So
helped me.
it's what's really interesting to me is this, like the fact you were on Atkins, now you're on carnivore. This all started because of your husband giving you that phone call, but your husband
Yes.
has never tried. He's never tried
Oh
this.
hell no. Oh no, I got a better chance of meeting the tooth fairy. Oh no, he would never. No, 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 never. No. It's not gonna happen.
He just likes pasta and stuff like that too much.
He loves all of that stuff. Yeah, no, we're when it comes to health, we're you know we're polar opposites. We're just I wish he would eat more like me, but you know what? It works, and because he has never learned to make friends with vegetables. So I grew up, I love veggies. I actually love veggies. I'm somebody who kind of misses them a little bit. But so when we have, and we always sit and have dinner together. I grew up, you sit at the table and you eat your meal. And to this day, I still practice that. You sit at the table and you eat your meal. And so he'll have his, we have our meat, whatever that is, if it's steak, if it's chicken, you know, whatever it is, but then he has his sides with it. And my side is a tin of sardines, or I'll have a couple of eggs with it. And so there's no extra effort. And I don't cook. I absolutely hate to cook. Really hate it a lot. So he cooks, and it's in everyone's best interest, honestly, if he does, because by the time I'm done, I'm like the last person you want to sit across the table from, because I've got steam billowing out of my ears and I'm swearing like a deranged sailor because I'm just so irritated. I hate everything about it. So, but we make that work, and it works out really well for us, and it's not a problem. It's not a problem. So, I think you have to sort of figure, it's a dance, when you're in a household with other people. I get it. That can really be complicated. It's like being a smoker, or, whatever it is. And the person who still lives, in that home still continues to do that. It's hard when well, just like when I did quit smoking, even for, I don't know, like 4 6 weeks, I stopped seeing my friends. Because I knew I wasn't there yet. I didn't have a handle on it. And so I had to just distance myself from people who did smoke, or going to bars where people were smoking. And until I felt like I really had a handle and could then be around it. So I get that. It's difficult when when you have other people in your life that you live with and you love, and how you see and do things is very different, and that can be
Mm.
difficult. But sometimes you can figure it out. You can figure it out.
Do you think that short-term isolation is generally applicable to most addictive behavior, whether it be alcohol, smoking, carbs, whatever?
I don't know. I don't think of myself honestly as an addictive person. And I'm really good at being able, when that switch goes off in my head where I decide I'm done, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is or who it is, I don't do sequels. The moment I decide I'm done, that's it. I'm done. And so there might be different ways that I figure out how to do that for me. Like when this is so disgusting, and it's a little off track, but maybe it helps people to be creative with their carnivore journey. But when I decided to quit smoking, I thought, well, it's kind of like going back to carnivore and low carb and never calling that food, making it absolutely disgusting, poison on a plate. And I did the same thing with smoking. I had a pickle jar filled with water, and I dumped an ashtray of old cigarette butts in it, closed the lid, And every morning for several weeks, when I got up in the morning, the very first thing I did was open that jar and inhale as deeply as I could till I wanted to vomit. And that turns you off of smoking pretty quickly. So I think, if something like that with carnivore works for you, where you think of ways that you make these foods less appealing to you, then do that. I mean, everyone has a different technique, and I think you sort of have to be. Well, I think you have to be honest with yourself and what kind of personality do I have. Not everyone is a cold turkey person like me. I would say most people are not, but I'm a very thick-headed, bullheaded, you can't tell me what to do kind of person. And that goes with bad habits also. They can't tell me what to do either. So when I decide I'm going to kick them to the curb, I mean, then that's it. I'm done with them. So if doing it gradually works for you, then do that. If isolating yourself for several weeks works for you, then do that. Maybe it's sort of a hybrid between the two, where you're socially around people in smaller doses, and that helps you. So you sort of, you have to know yourself, and you have to sort of figure it out. But at the end of the day, I think you have to remind yourself that who's most important here, and it's you. It's you. And I think if you keep that in mind, and that you don't want to be a burden to others, you don't want to be a burden to your employer, you don't want to be a burden to your coworkers or the medical system or taxpayers who are paying your disability because now you can't work. People say, well, it's my life, it doesn't affect other people, but that's not true. That is not true. It affects all of us in one way or another. When you don't take responsibility for yourself, it affects everyone else in some way. And I, thinking that way, I think has always helped me to stick with things that were difficult. But, at the end of the day, I knew that they were the right thing. They were the best thing to do. And so that's how I did it.
You've actually given a lot of advice about how people can, and it's good advice, like how people
it's
can
just funny
use
to
some
say that, because
stress.
I would never think of it as advice. Like I'm the last person you kind of want to take advice from,
But
I'm
I
flattered.
think it's good. I think it's good advice, like treating the food as poison, or kind of like with the pickle jar. One way to, I was, as you were talking, one way to turn yourself off the
Right.
food would be to watch YouTube videos about how the food's manufactured, stuff like
Yeah.
that,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
you see how they're putting it together. It's
Right.
not going to be as
Right.
appetizing. But like, just in terms of, if a friend came to you and said, "How should I get started?" What would you recommend?
Mm. If someone came to me and asked how to get started, I think maybe you need to think about why. And what are the important things in your life that this will benefit, including like the people in your life that you would be around for your kids, that you won't be a burden to your kids, that they have to. I mean, I see that around me a lot with people who are older, and their kids are taking care of them, and it's just a really sad situation. But I think you have to be honest with yourself and know yourself, and what kind of person are you. What's your personality? Are you an all or nothing like me, or are you someone who has to start out very gradually, and maybe for a month or 2 months you cut out one thing? I cut out pasta. That's a big step. I cut out pasta. And in 4 weeks from now, I'll cut out something else. And you stick with it, and you remind yourself why you're sticking with it. And so, yeah, I don't have any, I don't have any steps like, step one, do this, step two, do that. I think it's, knowing that you're worth it. You're absolutely worth it. You don't owe anyone an explanation or an apology. I think that's really important. It makes it easier when you're around people who may question it. And then, what is the easiest way that suits your personality? Maybe, when I get hungry for a piece of crap, I go for a walk instead. Or I go, hang out with a friend, or I go outside and I garden, or, you find other distractions, and what distractions are beneficial to you that might help. So, yeah, or you're like me and you have absolutely no freaking game plan whatsoever. You just dive in into the deep end. Don't know how to swim, but I'm going to figure it out anyway, and you make it to shore. So, but that for me that works. But I understand for most people that does not. I do get that. Yeah.
So nice. I think, as a deep end kind of person myself, I understand
Okay.
where you're coming from. So, Drace, is there a way that people can reach out to you? Do you have a website or social media?
I don't. You think, someone who has worked in media for the last 40 years of her life would be on social media, but I am not. Um, I have to look it up. I do. I have an email that I can give you that you can put in there. If somebody would want to reach out to me if they have any questions, or if there's something that I can do to lend a hand, I would be happy to do that. Yeah.
No worries. Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay.
Drace, thank you so much for coming on and
Thank
sharing your story
you.
with us.